So we're going to talk about the humoral response today. So we're going to do the humoral response. And then we are going to do just a self-check. So please don't do it while we're doing, because then you don't get a chance to think. And then we're just going to do some note-taking from the book as our follow-up. So humoral response has to do with the liquids, right? We talked about that the other day, blood, lymph. And it also has to do with the B cells and the antibodies. So this is a B cell, and it's got some antibodies on it, and it's got a little foreign somebody on there, an antigen. Okay, so humoral versus cell mediated, just to give us a little bit of background here. The humoral has to do with the B cells. Remember, we said blood, bone, B. It involves circulation of antibodies in the blood and lymph. So we're going to talk about antibodies. We want to be able to list them and talk about how they affect foreign antigens. So these are free-floating antigens in the blood and lymph. So they defend against all kinds of extracellular threats. Extracellular, so they're found outside of the cells, right? Viruses, bacteria. Cell-mediated, that's the next topic, not today. Cell-mediated is with the T cells, and they are cells that are actually infected. So they defend against intracellular, inside the cells. They also defend against transplanted tissue, and not that that's a good thing, but it's just something we need to recognize so that we can prevent it from happening when we do want to make transplanted tissues, right? Also defend against cancer cells. So going on about the humoral cells, or the humoral response, you guys read a little bit about this yesterday with the click and learn. They are activated by cytokines. So cytokines will be released from cells, which attract B cells to the area. When they are differentiating to match their specific antigens, they proliferate and make clones. So they make many, many copies of the exact same B cell with that specific antibody shape. So that will fit, it will fit the antigen. So proliferation means to make copies. Some of them may become plasma cells. The plasma cells will be the ones that generate the antibodies. So they are antibody factories. And the others become memory cells. We talked about the primary and secondary responses the other day. So the memory cells maintain that differentiation, specificity, and recognize antigens in the future. So memory cells have a much longer lifespan than does the plasma cell. So this is the one that gives us lifelong immunity, hopefully. They respond quickly and to a secondary exposure. So these are 5 different classes of antibodies. So notice they all have generally the same shape. They have that Y shape, but they seem to be arranged differently. And how they function will be based on their class. So the 5 spell out MADGE. That's my mnemonic device, MADGE. So the IG part of it is immunoglobulin. So when you get like an antibody test, they'll test for IG something, right? So these are the different classes, and the class determines how they work. So there's a constant region. That would be from here down. So the end piece, see how that shape changes? So this shape is going to be specific to the antigen. So the constant region is the lower portion that determines its class and how it can destroy the organism or the antigen. And then they have that variable region up at the top. So this is your 5 classes. So my mnemonic is just to remember the old lady's name, Madge. So here's the constant region in the darker color. See how it's darker down below and lighter up top. So the lighter portion is the variable and the darker portion is the constant. So the constant determines the class. They also have a heavy chain. So the long line on the inside, this is the heavy chain. These are protein molecules, remember. And this is the light chain on the outside. The variable region, see how this has different shapes? Puzzle piece, oval, V. Those different shapes are called the peritope. So the peritope on the antibody fits an epitope on an antigen. So notice this antigen has several shapes. The antibody has to have the same shape to fit it. So para around, the peritope fits around the epitope. Here's the epitopes, the different shapes on the antigen. So what does an antibody do? So it's not going to destroy the antigen itself. It's going to neutralize it and make it so that other white blood cells can come and destroy it. So it tags the foreign cells for destruction by phagocytes. Remember your phagocytic cells, neutrophils, monocytes, macrophages, they come and eat it up. So they neutralize it. They keep it from having an effect. That's what it means by neutralizing. Or they cause agglutination. So by binding to the antigen, they cause it to be rather heavy and precipitate out, or they grab hold of more than one at a time, and they call this that clumping, that agglutination. Or they work with the complement system to destroy. So I'm going to show you this video of antibodies at work. So these guys here, this would be some foreign body trying to get into your cells. Your cell is this one. So notice the receptors on your cells. If this foreign body can anchor to your receptors, it can gain access to your cells. Once it does that, it destroys your cells. So we want to keep those foreign bodies from gaining access to our cells. Antibodies happen in here. So this is neutralizing it, making it so it can't gain access to our cells. Phagocyte comes and finds it, throws it up. Okay, so that's an example of neutralization as well as probably precipitation. So this next slide, oops. This next slide, this is showing you those different features. So neutralization is what we just saw. It keeps it from binding to our own receptors. Here you can see, and you can see how different classes are going to function differently, right? So this class would bind with other antibodies, and each antibody is grabbing hold of one of the bacteria. And so it creates a big clump, which causes it to settle out of that liquid, but also makes it easier for a phagocyte to find and to eat. Precipitation is similar to this. White blood or the antibodies will grab more than one bacteria, for example, and so they create a big chain. And any of these just make it easier for the phagocyte to come and find them and eat them up. The other version works with the complement protein. So you can see here, the antibodies are anchoring the complement proteins. The complement proteins create a lesion. The lesion causes cell destruction. So this is our self-check. Just take a few minutes, short lecture today. Hopefully now you'll find those answers a little bit easier to do.